And it's unusual that you have a Sabbath and Christmas Day on the same particular day. It happens like once in every 10 or 11 years. And so we're somewhat fortunate that we can combine those two things together. Let me get my PowerPoint started so that we can be together. When the angel appeared to Joseph, he gave two names for this baby who's about to be born into the human race. This baby who would change human history. The first name is Jesus. But today I would like to focus on the second name, Emmanuel. Now, I think every Christian who has ever lived for the past 2,000 years knows that Emmanuel means God with us. However, not everybody recognizes the background to the name. The first time we meet this name is in the book of Isaiah, chapter 7. 800 years before Jesus was born, this name appeared. In that story, the name was a sign that God gave to the most evil king of Judah, Ahaz. Surrounded by the might of the Assyrians and other enemies, God sends the prophet Isaiah and says, Ahaz, I am with you. King Ahaz, who was as godly as they came, said, so what? Now I'm going to paraphrase the story for us a little bit. God says, anyway, I will make sure that you are not overcome by these enemies. I will take care of you. And Ahaz responds by saying, who asked for your help? God says, all right, if you don't want my help, I'm going to give you a sign anyway. And this sign will tell you that I am with you. Ahaz, being Ahaz, says, I don't want any sign from you. But God says, I will give you a sign anyway. And my sign is, a young woman shall give birth to a child. And before that child can say, Father, Mother, these enemies that surround you will be gone. And that child's name will be Emmanuel. Now, those of us who have studied the Bible passages all our lives, we know that this was more than just a sign given to Ahaz to reassure him of victory. This became a prophecy of the ultimate deliverance that God would send into our world. And so Joseph, being a good synagogue attending Jew, would have known that story. And when the angel announced that your baby will be called Emmanuel, his mind would have echoed way back 800 years to the Ahaz story. Now, like King Ahaz, the world in which Jesus was born was no more receptive than Ahaz had been. Governed by the cruelty of the Roman Empire, even the Jews had become participants in that cruelty through various forms of terrorism. And even those who should have known the birth of the Messiah apparently were caught unawares. I do not know how Joseph felt when he learned that that ancient prophecy was about to be fulfilled in a child that wasn't even his, a child of God, a child with the name that means God is with us. God is always with us. This idea of God with us is found throughout Scripture. But we'll look at a few significant episodes. There in the garden, after Adam and Eve had eaten the forbidden fruit, God still came into the garden to walk, almost pretending as if he did not know what had happened. When they hid themselves, God actually spoke out, hey, Adam, Eve, where are you? I'm looking for you. I am still here. And even though Adam and Eve were driven out of the garden, the experience of being taught how to make a sacrifice on their behalf was simply a reminder of God saying, I am still with you. I am still here. I am not going anywhere. Imagine for a minute that you were Noah and his family stuck in this boat for 40 days of torrential rain and deluge such as the world had never seen. And as that water engulfed the rest of the planet, the ark remained afloat. Can you imagine the storm waves? Can you imagine the seasickness that would have happened on all the animals and on this tiny little micro family? But even after the 40 days of rain had ended, Noah and his family remained for another 5 months or so, stuck inside that ark with nowhere to go. And yet when they exited from the ark and offered their first sacrifice to God, immediately God painted a sign across the heavens and told Noah and his family, I am with you. You see, that sign, that bow that we call the rainbow, became a symbol of this presence of God. The sacrifice for Adam and Eve reminded them that God was still with them. The bow reminded Noah and his family that God would still be with them. A more significant episode occurred around Mount Sinai. God had told Israel to prepare. He is going to come down on the mountain, and for the very first time, sinful humans will see his presence, will see his glory. And as God descended on that mountain, it caught on fire, lightning and thunder everywhere, the earth shaking, and the Israelites ran. They ran for their lives because they were afraid. But God spoke from that mountain. He says, you are my special treasure. You have seen what I did for you in Egypt. You have witnessed how I carried you on eagle's wings. But also from that mountaintop, God instructed Moses and the Israelites, make me a tent, make me a tabernacle, make me a sanctuary that I may live among you. This was God's way of saying, I am here. I am Emmanuel. I am your God who will always be with you through 40 years of desert journey, 300 years of the anarchy of the Judges period, and through centuries of the wishy-washy monarchy period. God remained connected to his people. And even in the worst moments of their lives, God would agonize in texts such as, how can I give you up, O Israel? I have brought you up as children, but you have turned your back on me. The more I call you, the more you ran away. And yet God says, I am with you. I am here. So in the worst moment of the monarchy period, during a king considered the most evil by Bible writers, Ahaz, God sends the name Emmanuel, because that name told them God never abandoned them. God never left them. In their worst moments, in their best moments, God was with them. You can almost picture the puzzlement in Joseph's face as he thought about all of those stories, reminding his people of the presence of God. And now here he is stuck with an impossible situation to be the father, the son of God, and the scandal that would accompany all of that. And yet being told that God is with you. God is with us. God has never abandoned planet Earth. We can also have a look at Mount Carmel. Elijah, all alone on that mountain, surrounded by the armies of King Ahab, another hugely wicked king, surrounded by the priests and prophets of Baal. He stands firm before God, knowing that his God can bring fire from heaven, and taunts the suffering of those priests and prophets of Baal for an entire day because they could not bring fire from heaven. Their God was impotent, but not the God of Israel. And he stood there. Now, you recall the story that after this great victory, Elijah descends into tremendous depression. But God demonstrated his presence by sending birds to bring him food, by sending angels to bring him food, by reminding him that his mission was not yet over. I am with you. God is with us. But probably the worst moment of history for the people of Israel is what we know of as the Babylonian captivity. 586 AD, Nebuchadnezzar and his hordes of Babylonian army besieged the city, broke through the gates, burned down the temple and the city, and deported the majority of the people off to Babylon. And we know the sense that these exiles felt. Because somebody in that group wrote down the psalm that said this: by the rivers of Babylon we sat and we wept. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? But a prophet who lived among those exiles had a grand vision. He saw the cloud of God that had rested over the tabernacle and the temple of Solomon rise up from the ruins of Jerusalem, travels eastward towards Babylon, and comes to a standstill over the river Kebar, where the Jewish people were resettled, and stayed there until Cyrus permitted them to return home some 70 odd years later. And so, to remind Israel that God was with them, that God had never abandoned them, Ezekiel ends his book with a very unusual name for God: Yahweh Shammah. Yahweh is here. This God was there in the Garden of Eden. He was there in the ark, in that deluge. He was there on the mountaintop and in the sanctuary with Israel. He is there with them at this moment in Babylon. No wonder the people who went into Babylon returned to the land eventually rather transformed. The sins that had led them to that exile and captivity were purged from their lives. For the first time, they came to understand that God was truly with them, that God is truly Emmanuel. And so on their return trip, they wrote another psalm. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Israel, we were like dreamers. Our mouths were filled with joy, our tongues with shouts of gladness. Totally opposite a reaction. Maybe for the first time, they understood that God had never abandoned them, and Joseph would have had reason to recall those experiences. But now he has the experience himself. This is Bethlehem. The Son of God has entered in the lowliest and the most vulnerable position that God could ever adopt, making himself completely exposed to the whims and fancies of humanity, and yet still remain Emmanuel. Now, this is Christmas season, the Advent season in the Christian calendar. This is when the Christian world attempts to remember the birth of Jesus. The commercial world may remember Santa Claus and Christmas trees and jingle bells. But God's people are supposed to recall his birth. Never mind the date. We do not know when Jesus was born, so any date will do. And yet for 2,000 years, Christians have attempted to recall that most significant event of God becoming human, emptying himself of divinity, risking his very existence for just one simple little message: I am with you. His name shall be Emmanuel. God is with us. You see, God has never left us. And years later, as John sits and writes his gospel, he pens in these amazing words in the prologue. And the word became human and lived among us so that we can see the glory of the Father. When they asked Jesus, please show us the Father, he had a very simple answer. He said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. There is nothing more to say. There is nothing more to do. I am with you. Bethlehem, more than any other episode in biblical history, highlights, like Zoom does with the speaker, it highlights this simple message of God: I am with you. But to what extent does the presence of God stay with us? Well, I would like to suggest that as we move ahead into the new year, that Emmanuel will be with us in the shadows of life. When things don't go well, this is the confidence that led David to say, even if I walk through the darkest valley of the shadow of death, I will not be afraid, for you are with me. This is the confidence that God tried to inject into his people by saying, do not be afraid. When you go through the floods, they cannot drown you. When you walk through the flames, they cannot burn you. I am with you. This is the promise that is embedded in that great passage of Isaiah 40, comfort my people, speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Now, there may be shadows in your life, in my life, in the coming year. We have no way of knowing this. But what we do know for certain is that this Emmanuel, who was born as a baby in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, he will be in those shadows with us. And so we can say like David, we can say like Isaiah, there is no need for fear. The pandemic may not get better. The economy of the world may not get better. Climate change is destroying the planet, but we can live in that shadow of life because of a simple conviction: God is with us, Emmanuel. But you see, God will also be with us in the bright sunlight of life. When everything is great, when we feel like we are floating on cloud nine, when we experience successes and blessings more than we can count, when we will hear the celebration of God through that passage, arise, shine, for your light has come and the glory of the Lord shines upon you. We will have those moments in the new year. It is part of the master plan of God. Where there are shadows, there will be sunlight. It doesn't matter how hard it rains, we know that there is a rainbow at the end of the rain. You cannot experience a rainbow without the rain. We know that there is sun behind the darkest cloud. The darkest winter, the sun will come out. The darkest monsoon, typhoon, tornado, the sun will come out. And in those moments, we will see once again that God is with us. We will also know that God is Emmanuel in the struggles of life. Jesus himself told his disciples, in the world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. When we have to struggle step by step by step, and we wonder why we should continue, what is the point of all this? Let us remind ourselves that God is Emmanuel. He is with us. I would also like to suggest that God will be Emmanuel when there are no signposts to guide us. When we feel completely lost and we don't know if we should turn to the right, to the left, go straight, make a U-turn, when we are completely disoriented, when life throws us a left curve ball, we will know that God is with us. He is still Emmanuel. And when those moments strike you, we can recall the promise of Jesus, I am the way. There may be no signpost. We may be confused. Puzzlement may be part of our lives, but we will know that he is there. You see, this is Emmanuel. Not just Emmanuel of the past, of biblical history, or of the present, but of the future, of our own lives. At all of those moments, the high ones, the low ones, the confused ones, he is Emmanuel. But what about this? When life is one big traffic jam and you are stuck in it and you feel like you're getting nowhere, and it doesn't matter what you do, the traffic just crawls at its own pace, and you begin to wonder, where is this God? I hope that you come back to this promise at the birth of Jesus. His name is Emmanuel. He is with you. He is in that traffic jam with you and me. He never leaves. In fact, he may be more present, so to speak, in that traffic jam of life than you and I can ever possibly imagine. Or perhaps we need it most, this assurance of Emmanuel, when life runs away from us, when everything goes helter-skelter, like a movie in rapid motion, and we do not know where it's all going to end. Emmanuel, he will be there. He is with us. But lastly, I would like to suggest that the best place to experience Emmanuel, the best place to know this God, is on the mountaintops of life. Have you ever wondered why most of the important stories in the Bible involve a mountaintop? God inviting Moses to the top of the mountain, God descending on a mountaintop to meet Israel, Elijah on the mountaintop, Jesus on a mountaintop. Because you see, in those high elevated places, we are closer to him than we can ever be at the valley floor. And in those mountaintop experience, we can see God more clearly. We can see the validity and the veracity of his promise. I am Emmanuel. I am with you. People may desert you. Your parents may abandon you, but I am with you. Your friends may turn against you. The nation may target you, but I am with you. A virus may be causing havoc in the world. Floods and storms are destroying lives and properties, but I am with you. I don't know what the coming year holds for any of us. But in the words of an old song, I know who holds tomorrow. Emmanuel. This God who was present at the creation of the world, who was present in the ark with Noah, who stood on that mountaintop to speak to Israel, who gave strength to Elijah to face a vast opposition all alone, who enabled those captives in Babylon to exit from their exile with joy in their hearts. This Emmanuel, who was born as a baby to lift us out of the quagmire of sin, to turn the world upside down, to demonstrate to us once and for all that he is love. This is the Emmanuel that you must carry with you in your heart, in your mind, through every valley, but especially on every mountaintop that you will climb. I would also like to suggest that the more mountaintop experiences we have with God, the greater will be the strength of that promise, that Emmanuel concept within our hearts. You see, that's what enables God's people to survive problems, crises, persecution, martyrdom even. The knowledge that God is with us, that even death cannot hold us back because he is here. I imagine for a brief time that Joseph probably had all of these things in his mind as he pondered the life of this baby that's about to be born. His name shall be called Emmanuel, for God is with us. God has placed the human race at a high premium. God has decided that no matter what, he will never let go of the human race that he has formed in his own image, that God will even sacrifice his own life in order to ensure that we know he is Emmanuel. As you approach the new year, can you honestly say in your heart that you have known this Emmanuel, and that Emmanuel is the God you worship every Sabbath, every day of your life? That Emmanuel is the God who strengthens you. Emmanuel is the God who enables you to say, even if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not be afraid. Emmanuel is the God who empowers you to say, I am persuaded that nothing can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus, our Emmanuel. If you carry Emmanuel in your heart, in your mind for 2022, then it will indeed be a happy new year. There is no other option. It won't be happy because circumstances are good. It will be happy because there is that depth of perception in our faith. You see, the God I serve, the God I worship, was the God that was named Emmanuel. In the worst of times with King Ahaz, and in the most touching moment of history with the birth of Jesus. But he has always been Emmanuel from creation, and he will be Emmanuel until the end of the earth. I am with you always, he promised his disciples, even unto the end of the age. Walk with him. Keep faith with him. Remain loyal to him. Stay close to him. Allow him to make the changes that you can never make on your own. And then you and I can experience a truly, truly blessed 2022. Because the one thing we can be guaranteed of is Emmanuel will be with us. And so I hope that as we bring this little reflection to a close, that you will determine in your hearts to hear the song of the angels, the announcement of the angels about Emmanuel and the glory of God resting upon the human race, resting upon you, resting upon me. What is there to worry? What is there to fear? What is there to be concerned about? God is Emmanuel. Only one question. Is God your Emmanuel? Is he my Emmanuel? If he is, God bless you, and I wish you a very, very good 2022 in the name of Emmanuel. Shalom. God bless. Have a good Sabbath. Enjoy the rest of this Christmas day and the last few days of this year, and then say bye to it in peace and greet the new one with Emmanuel in your hearts. God bless. Thank you.